This is Signal and Noise, bringing clarity to data, tech, and AI.
All right, Zach, thanks for joining.
Nice to see you, sir.
Yeah, this is my first podcast episode for Signal and Noise. I have lots of experience in the past, but this is the first time doing something with them. Excited to have you on as my first guest.
Should I feel honored? I don't know.
You should. Well, there's a reason for this. Is because you were instrumental in my career switch when I, went from filmmaking to, doing product management. I had a startup, so I had a lot of tech experience, that was very chaotic and loose. And I also had, got my full stack certificate. But when I was going for my first legitimate job, you were instrumental in kind of helping coach me and getting me feel, confident enough to do the full career switch. So I figured you'd be the perfect person to have on my first podcast here.
Well, now I'm going to hit you up for a job.
You should. Well, no, I think this is a good way of also you have a ton of experience in this industry, and we're at a very weird time in the industry where things are changing rapidly with technology, as they do. So I just wanted to kind of get where you're at, as also, some of your insights that you've had over your long career, but also, if you notice, when I sent you the schedule ahead of time, we're going to dive into some stuff predicting what's to come. So
absolutely.
Why don't we dive in and you just kind of tell me how you got started? What was your origin story for, becoming a product manager?
So before I get bit by the radioactive spider, right?
Yeah. Before you got your super suit.
No. So I didn't set out to be a product manager. I started closer to UX and operations. But I kept finding myself in the middle of these messy problems, where business and tech and users, they weren't aligned. Product was just the role that owned the mess. Mm-hmm. I've always been a problem solver. So it just took me a while to figure out that job was actually called product manager.
It's funny because I come from the film world, and that was what I loved about filmmaking was that you're essentially putting out fires every day. You're getting teams to talk to each other. They need a leader with vision, to point people where they're going. Mm-hmm. That's the producer and director role. And so for me, it was an easy transition, way easier than I assumed because I just was not familiar with that, that world. Well, so, your background spans fintech, SaaS, health tech. Is there a common thread between all those worlds, or is it generally just all these different beasts you've managed to, slay?
Well, so when I was a kid, my father worked for the big banks. He was a senior systems analyst, and he used to come home and talk to me about COBOL and CICS, all this stuff. I had no interest. I was like, yeah, Dad, that's great. And I never had any interest in working in tech whatsoever. So I ended up owning a business when I grew up in New York, and when I lived there, I owned this business. I sold the business and I moved out to Denver. And my background beyond this business was in sales. Mm-hmm. So I took this job in sales, and I was miserable. I was like, this is not what I was not happy, not where I wanted to be. So what ended up happening was everyone who lived around me in that neighborhood, they were all going to boot camps. I'm becoming a web developer. I'm becoming whatever. So I was looking at these guys and I was going, well, how difficult is this? And I knew I didn't want to be in sales anymore. So I ended up finding my way to UX because I looked at my skills and I was like, this is my skill set. Where does this fit in the tech world? Because no matter what you do, you can do it in tech. If you're a chef, you can go get a job at, some FANG cooking, no matter what you do, you can do it in tech. So I took my skill set and I said, all right, I'm going to apply this to UX. And I started taking this UX course. It was all the things I learned in this UX course were fascinating to me. Although I didn't have that, not the design piece, but that graphic background, graphic design background. So when the course finished, I was, we all made portfolios in this course. I took my portfolio and I put it up next to any of these other people I went to school with. And I was like, I'm never getting a job in UX.
I thought that was going to go in a different direction, but okay.
Well, no, I was like, I just don't have the chops. So then what I ended up doing was I was like, all right, well, I have these sales skills and this personality. And now I have these UX skills. What can I do with this? And this was before AI, because now you would just go into ChatGPT and say, hey, what can I do with this? But I was like, all right. And so this is kind of how I managed to find my way into product.
Yeah, I'll say that when I got my full stack certificate, I was like one of the oldest people in the class. It was an online class, and but I could tell that I was like definitely on the upper age limit of who was attending it. But what was funny is like I was coming at it from like years of experience of running companies and managing people, and I could just see there's a huge disconnect between just like the people part of the skills, right? Like, yeah, you can do the projects, you can do the code, but it was like, can you also like communicate it properly? And I was constantly reaching out to the professors and having, conversation. I actually end up, they're part of my network now because I made a point to network with them offline, right? And just like send them questions that were not related to the stuff at hand. And I could just, and I even asked them, I was like, are any other students doing this? They're like, oh God, no. Like, it's so rare to get anybody who's, actively thinking bigger than just the certificate in front of them. But
Well,
so
it's
I get it,
interesting
man.
you bring that up because, when you start working with developers, you realize why they're developers.
Yeah, definitely. For good or ill.
Oh yeah, of course. But I mean, you realize that like there's no way a developer could communicate with with a business person or really
That's going to
anyone.
tie into a question I have later, but which is one of my biggest failures in this role. But we'll get into that later. I did want to ask more about your career. So you have like some really impressive numbers in your bio because I was doing a little, surfing your LinkedIn and some of your online presence. So you have like 30% increase in digital claims completion, 50% reduction in onboarding time. So can you like pick one of those and just kind of walk through us like how you managed to, transform something as a product manager?
So it doesn't matter what job I end up building like a customer onboarding tool no matter where I am, and I don't know
Yeah.
why. Maybe it's the
Well,
UX
'cause
thing.
maybe it's the sales part of your
I
background.
don't know, but it's a recent project I was building yet another customer onboarding tool. We were receiving a lot of complaints that the claims were being driven to the call center. It was an insurtech. So the claims were being driven to the call center, and it was about identifying like where the disconnect was, and how and why was this happening. So through a little research, I found that the customers were getting lost. Mostly, it was like confusing wording because it was the original onboarding tool was built by people in the industry,
Mm.
and in the insurance industry, there's a lot of jargon, and they just assume that but lay people don't know. You don't know what things are until you learn. So what was happening was these people were going and filing claims and then not understanding it and not wanting to mess it up because it was important. So they would stop and they would just call the 800 number. It was driving all these calls to the call center. So obviously, we talked twice now about my UX background, but I also have experience with real people, and I understood that. So it wasn't a far stretch for me to understand why this was happening. Um, so like if you take yourself, right? Say your wife or your mom is sick and you have to file a claim to take off of work. Like, do you know the difference between FMLA and PFML?
God, no.
Do you
This
even know if you're
seriously is my world because I work in the, healthcare industry as well, and I didn't come from that world.
right?
So
Well, not
trying to explain this to people who use jargon and acronyms is like, but I get it. It's like it gets you there quicker for them.
well, yeah,
But you're
no,
right. It's
absolutely.
completely destabilizing and confounding to people who are not of that world.
Well, absolutely. And then when you first get into that world and you hear all this jargon, you're like, I made an entire glossary of like just
Oh,
terms,
that
And
was
I was
clever.
like,
Yeah.
I was like, let me control F that and figure out what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, so you understand this, but maybe other people don't. But when you hear all this jargon and you're not sure, you don't know if you're supposed to file a FMLA claim or a PFML claim, or if your state has PFML or whatever it is.
Hmm.
Your state does, by the way, in case you're wondering.
Thank you.
But
Now
beyond
I
that,
know.
like, so once you understand that, and once I understood that, it was very easy for me to, parlay that into like, hey, let's fix this onboarding tool. Once you do that, something like that's a major change. And once you accomplish that, that 50% reduction it's not a huge deal.
I mean, it's not a huge deal when you look at it that way, but I agree. I think as a product guy, like that's my first like approach is like, who is this for? Like, and who is it? Because
Right.
it's obviously not for industry people who are going to be navigating this site. And it's crazy to me how few people really like in our industry, like bring that to the table.
To digress a few weeks ago, I was working on an internal tool, and I was working with one of my stakeholders, and she was trying to come up with some help text. And like she was saying the same thing I was saying in a different order.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I was saying it made so much more sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think so much of it, though, is really like, this is why I encourage, you said earlier, which I think is important, you're a chef, you can work in tech. Like, so many times people do not pursue a career path because they think, oh, I don't have the personality for it. I don't have the background for it. And it's like, we desperately need you in this industry.
Well,
And
I
you know,
think
because
that's
like those varied backgrounds, those varied perspectives are invaluable when it comes to building better products.
Well, that's exactly it. You know, we constantly read all these job postings that say, doesn't matter if you have the experience, apply anyway.
Yeah, can you learn? Because
Yeah,
that's more important
and
nowadays
that's
than
really,
being having the certificate. But so one of the things I loved about a post you did recently, because I feel like this is like one of my strengths of when I took on over this role, but also just my personality, is this idea of structuring ambiguity. I just love that term because I do feel like that's so much of what my day-to-day job is. And so when did you realize that that was like the job and not just, you know, shipping features, which is what everybody thinks a product guy's doing?
probably when I started hearing we have this random problem. You know, it's very hard to just solution that. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to ask those questions. You have to, you have to be curious. You have to say, well, explain the problem and how is this affecting, A, B, and C. And once you understand, the problem and what it's affecting, it's at least easier for me to structure that in a way that I can say, all right, now this is the problem. Where's the solution?
Yeah, I mean, so another, like, to, you know, follow up on that, you describe problems as like signals, you know, customers are frustrated or this process feels broken. You know, what's your actual process from going from like that vague signal to something you can actually execute on?
So you have to know and understand your problem. And you also have to understand that you can ask a question in two different ways and get two totally different answers. Um, there's a 4-step process that I use. I lay it out. It starts with defining that problem. Your problem statement is super important.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to define a good problem statement and understand what the problem is. Once you do that, um, you break it down. So let me tell you a story about a project I worked on.
Yeah, I'd love to hear
It was we were given 15 million parking tickets. Not that I had to pay, but the data
it.
for
Like,
15 million
wow,
parking
somebody
tickets,
doesn't care about the law.
right? It was 5 years of historic parking ticket data. And we were challenged, like, hey, what are you going to do with this? So I joined the project, a few months after it started. And basically the developers had just started building a heat map.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put all that data into the server, it was overloading the server and crashing the server. So I was working with one of the data scientists one day, and I was looking at the data, and I noticed GPS coordinates on the data. And I asked, I said, are these GPS coordinates? He goes, yeah. I go, so we know where every one of these parking tickets was written and when it was written. And he goes, yeah. And I go, why aren't we using that? And he goes, well, what do you mean? Because, again, data scientists and programmers think very differently. I said,
Yes.
if we know where the tickets were written and when, we can build an algorithm to say, hey, this is what's going on and this is where the guy's going to be. So basically, that's what we did. And to validate it, it's funny. We, I took lunch, right? Everyone eats lunch usually between 11 and 2, usually, right?
Can I predict you went to where you knew they were not going to ticket you?
No, not even, because it was in a totally different city. So this is what I did. I went on Google Maps and I looked at the ticket data and I found the restaurants that were around where the tickets were written. And I said, all right. I said, I bet you this guy or woman or whatever likes this, this sandwich shop. This is the only sandwich shop in 3 blocks, or maybe it's the only, and we just took a bunch of data points and we put them on a map and said, all right, what, are these tickets showing up at this time, between 11 and 2? And once we did that, I did something kind of unscrupulous. I called the health department and I called in a complaint and I got the place closed for the day. And then we went back to the data. No tickets.
That's real unscrupulous, man.
Well, it worked. It's validated by data.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so
I'm sure that sandwich shop was pissed, but
it was
maybe. But also, in your defense, maybe they needed a wake up call with their, the cleanliness of the establishment. We don't know. We don't know.
It was a corporate sandwich shop anyway.
All right, whatever. Screw them.
But yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, so it's funny though you say that because so many times when people come to me on my team, they're always coming to me with like a solution without any explanation. And it's like my entire job is reverse engineering what they're trying to tell me to what actually the problem is. Like that's
Right.
so much of my day to day is like, okay, you're telling me you need this fixed. Why? And like, let's
Right.
go back into what is actually broken, what's not working. And I applaud people for trying to be proactive and find solutions, but so often their solution is like a temporary short-term fix from their perspective. So they're not taking into account every other, stakeholder. So it's just like getting them to go back to what the real issue is. And then from there, I can put it into like, context of what I need to do. Let's see. So in your, from PM to product leader, so you draw a clear line between like a PM mindset, a product leader mindset. And when did you feel that, a PM mindset and a product leader mindset? Like there's the two distinctive ways to approach that. And so when did you feel that shift happened for you personally?
So I was on a project where I was basically an order taker. I was completely siloed from users, and really just stuck basically in a corner, listening to the stakeholders saying, "We need this and we need that." And I said, "Well, can we talk to some users? Can we find out like why? How do I know if I put that field on the screen that it's in the right place?" Or
You
even
just described my nightmare, really.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, like it was impossible to function as a PM successfully. So once I saw that, and I was like, I need to get the hell out of here. But beyond that, like it taught me that being a leader doesn't mean you're a good product leader.
Hmm.
You can have that title. That doesn't mean anything. It just means some executive thought you deserved the title. Um, Titles are bestowed upon us by management. So just because this person was my boss, and I say that in air quotes,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they know any more about product than I do. And that kind of convinced me. I said, that's the difference between product leadership and product management.
Yeah. I'll say the best compliment I got from the president of my company, she was like, you know what? Since you started here, I don't have to have any of the anxiety or worry over the product anymore. She's like, I know you're just going to figure it out and handle it. And I was like, that is like the kindest thing anybody said to me in a really long time. But it's true. It's like, because you take charge, you have to be a leader in that. And like, she knows that I'm going to step in if there's an issue, if something's going wrong. I'm not waiting around for permission to do things. It's like you run forward and, find a solution. But that does bring up an interesting, question, which is like, how do you balance the pressure to ship something in the short term, right, against like a long-term strategic vision? And that's the thing that I always am trying to keep my eye on the ball, where I'm like, okay, I'm making trade-offs with every decision, but how am I keeping that, pointed to my North Star, which is like the product roadmap, 6 months, a year down the road, 2 years down the road.
Well, and you hit the nail right on the head there. It's a balance between the backlog grooming and the backlog management, and just cornering the stakeholders and beating the crap.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about communication. You have to communicate what your needs are versus what your stakeholder needs are. So your stakeholder can come to you and say, "We need this fixed and we need it now," and you have to very clearly say to them, "All right, well, I can do that for you, but what are we giving up?"
Yeah.
And I'm big on like asking like 3 times. So,
It's funny. I just dealt with this where we had this whole referral program we wanted to do with like users on our site. It's like we wanted
Mhm.
to, incentivize them to bring more people on. I think that was like the right call but they never would get back to me on clarity on like how we were going to do that. So I just shelved it, and they kept coming back to me. When is that going to be available? I'm like, well, when you get me all the information, I will. And then it went on long enough to the point where they're like, we're doing this huge marketing campaign in like 2 weeks or whatever. And I was
Right.
like, wait, so you don't have the referral program figured out yet? So I just essentially had to eat it because I
Mhm.
put it off too long because I didn't think it was ready until they gave me those pieces. But I
Right.
had to just eat it because I was like, strategically, like this would be good for the company and also for my vision of what I need to do for this product. So I was like, man, like I don't know. I was like, I wish I would have hammered them harder on certain things, or honestly, I would have saved myself some headaches if I just actually acquiesced earlier. But
Right.
I have to admit, I put off some priorities that I really am now like kicking myself a little bit over. But like it was the right call, because then we had these campaigns go out. Then all of a sudden the referral program's there. People are signing up with it. We're seeing the users increase. So I was like, it was the right call, but I still wish I could have gotten them to figure out the incentive part of it.
I'll tell you that the easiest way I find to do it is just keep asking.
Yeah.
And eventually they'll be like, "Why do you keep asking? Well, and they
Squeaky
won't
wheel.
forget
Hell
the
yeah.
answer they give you either. You know?
Yeah. And honestly, though, sometimes like, and my whole thing is perfect should never be the enemy of good. And like, you don't know until you put stuff out there and then you can update it. Like, you have a lot of assumptions you can do and a lot of data you can get, but until real users are interacting with it. So one of the arguments the vice president gave me, which I agree, which is what allowed me to then flip the switch, is she was like, people will use it anyway. And I was like, okay, like, I do think they would use it more. Like, it would be a better push if we we turned on the spigot for, incentivizing it. But I'm like, you're right. Let's see what it's like now when we don't incentivize it. So when we actually get our act together in the next couple months, I can add that portion to it. Then we'll have both data points to see how much it increased. And I was like, you know what? You're right. We're going to do it.
So you were A/B testing.
Essentially now we're like out of duress, but that's and from my perspective, like, yeah, like, you don't always have to, something doesn't have to be perfect before you're shipping it out, even though I do feel like we missed the opportunity by not getting our act together. Better to put something out there than nothing at this point.
Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of fail early and fail often, you know?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to kind of transition to kind of the future focus, talking a little bit about AI and the definitely the challenging landscape that it's bringing for people in our positions. So, from a product perspective, how has the arrival of this AI tooling changed the way you think about roadmaps and prioritization?
So it's changing everything. 100% it's changing everything. I was in a meeting 2 weeks ago where they were talking about, product managers not writing JIRAs anymore and going right to building prototypes. And actually, I've been playing with Claude Code a lot. Just building apps. There's an app I had an idea back in when I was in school for UX. I had an idea for an app that the technology just wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
But now I can prototype it out and see if it'll work. Which is
Totally.
awesome.
No,
Yeah,
in this past week, I wrote 2 side apps that are not connected directly to the product that we're using for demos. Like, I have a sales team that's going out to they're going to a conference, and they were like, oh, this would be game changing if you had this like feasibility calculator thing, which I already designed with the engineers, but it's like limited. And he's
right.
like, we want to put all these things in. I'm like, I can't get that to you in a week. I was like, or can I? So I essentially just use Claude Code, and I have the full stack background.
Right.
So I just like threw it together in, I think, 1 hour. I did the first version, got comments back from the sales team, updated it, and now they're in Chicago demoing it on the floor with people,
See, that's
and like
awesome.
that is like game changing. Like, I cannot, so because what I'm going to do is, if they'll get feedback from actual potential customers, and then I can go to the engineering team and say, hey, I'll probably do one more update on it and then hand that over to them and say, this is this, pretty dodgy thing I built, but this is the study of it. Like, this is what's working. This is what we need to do. And I can give them way more, and seeing the tactile version of it, I'm sure they're going to have 1,000 more questions than they would if it was just like, the data in front of them, or like the Figma file and the linear tickets. Like, they'll actually get to interact with it.
Well, I think that leads into like the whole conversation about AI and our jobs are going to change, and it's going to be all that prototyping and like you're going to collect. I think you're going to collect information, and you're going to prove yourself with a prototype rather than what we're doing now is a lot more documentation based. I'm not going to be sitting here writing PRDs probably, but I'm going to take that information and build a prototype, and that'll be my PRD or my and you'll bring that to the developers and be like, all right, this is how I want it to work. And this isn't working quite right, but if it could change, and that's kind of, you'll still have to do some writing, but I think that's how it's going to go.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, so the funny thing is, like, I love my engineers because they always bring solutions that I didn't think of,
Right.
that are, whether it's front end, how people interact with it, whether it's back end efficiencies, like, that's why they are the engineer. Like, they have a way, how they think and process things. Like, it's just not my skill set, but being able to give them that direction and the vision is important. So I feel like just getting it closer to that alignment, but then also allowing that room for them to put in input and creativity. This isn't, hey, this is the finished product, like, put it up on, just take this and tweak it. No, it's like, here's what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? And then getting their input. But I do agree. I think like show don't tell is going to become the norm at this point.
Yeah, well, I think that's important with your background of your full stack background, but I think that's collaborative work. That's always been that way. I can say, hey, I have this idea to an engineer, and he'll say, well, yeah, it's a good idea, or hey, that won't work because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And that's all about collaboration.
Yeah, which is the reason I love this line of work. Honestly, it's like to me, this is no different than the creative expression I did in filmmaking, where it's like a team of people working together, at a shared vision, and everybody bringing their all their strengths to it. So I have a question though. Have you shipped any like AI, you know, at its core features yet? Have you ever had the opportunity to play around with that in your line of work, or is it more just like side projects?
It's really all just side projects for now. I've done a lot of work in machine learning.
Yeah.
Like back in when I worked for a payment processor, and we were using machine learning to like highlight mistakes in payments before they dropped out of the payment process.
Hmm.
And that was just before AI really hit, before ChatGPT came out and all that. But I haven't had the opportunity to really work in AI. I've been doing a lot of learning about it,
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, because honestly, it frustrates me that now AI is the term where I'm like, machine learning's been around for decades. This idea of what an AI is, it's only because people don't understand large language models, which is really like pattern recognition with language.
mhm.
And, it's super powerful, but I do feel like we're getting in this trap where people who don't fully understand it are just running wild with it in a way that is like, my prediction is that a lot of solutions that people are implementing now are going to have to be redone because they're incredibly inefficient and wasteful. Because
Well,
it was like, oh, I'll use an LLM for this. It's like, why don't you use machine learning for 90% of this and an LLM for this part? You know what I mean? Like understanding how they all interact. And so I do, and again, I'm going to keep ranting, but I do think like a lot of these solutions are based on how cheap and easy it is to have this processing in the background, that they're essentially doing what Uber did, which is like, oh, you get it for cheap or free, when the actual hard costs are getting pushed into the future.
right. No, I mean, I think that there's a twofold response to that. First is AI is the new cloud computing. Remember when cloud
Hmm.
computing, everyone was, oh, we'll use the cloud, Well, it's the same kind of thing. They're throwing AI, we'll just use AI, and it doesn't really work that way. I can't tell you how many conversations I have where I'm explaining what a large language model is to someone.
Hmm.
How I'm explaining that it's not actually thinking, it's just understanding that these are the words, and it knows that these words go in this order.
Yeah.
It's been taught that.
No, I mean, so when, coming from kind of the AI background, when I had my startup, when I first got this position, there was incredible pressure from the organization in general, this huge healthcare organization, to be like, how are you leveraging AI? How are you leveraging AI? And I'll give my president a lot of credit. She's like, well, Lucas comes from that background, so what he says he wants to do, that's what we're going to trust. Which was very cool, because I didn't have an answer for her. I'm like, I do not have a good use case yet on how this will actually improve anything across the board. I was like, if we were going to plug it into our product today, I'm like, I don't have an answer for you yet. And then like a year went by when I was like tinkering around, learning the product better, seeing how people interact with stuff. And the big light bulb moment for me was realizing how in our internal team, they were constantly struggling to pull insights from the data. There wasn't a dashboard I could build for them that would give them what they needed, because it was always weird, nuanced queries about like, because we're a bunch of healthcare, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of healthcare experts that we, have to, query. And so that was my light bulb moment, because I was constantly going to ChatGPT and putting in these like complex, putting in the structure of our database. I put our taxonomy in there, and I was going, okay, I need to find this expert from this region who prescribed this drug. How do I connect all the tables, write the SQL code for me? And I'd go and pull those data, and I'd give it to my team. And I was like, like LLM could do this for me. Like
Right.
I could be replaced doing this task with it. So I brought that online, where essentially it translates what they want into the data that they need. And so it's essentially pulling the data directly from the database. It also walls it off so that you're not sharing sensitive information from our database about our experts. This is personal information with an LLM. So all it's doing is writing the code, pulls it like a SQL query, and then gives the table that they asked for. And I'm like, so I've only been like testing it still on a small subset right now internally. But as soon as it should be the next week or two, I'm going to unleash this on my entire team. And I'm just so curious to see how much more efficient it makes them. Because currently they're like dying, like being crushed by spreadsheets, and then trying to like use LLMs to like load spreadsheets in and get insights. I'm like, that's the worst way to use it. Like, it's not going to work well for you. So anyway, that was like one of the main solutions I saw, like low-hanging fruit to like how you, but also think about this, token costs. So like if you loaded in like 10,000 records and were like, hey, can you make sense of this? You're going to burn tokens doing that for these LLMs. But if you're like, just give me the SQL code, I'll return this.
Right.
And then that's like pennies on the dollar for that. So anyway,
well, and
rant over.
I mean, that's return on investment is really what that is. But you're going back to my thought about AI and productivity and how it's going to change product, because you're not going to be sitting there writing documentation. You're going to be like, hey, this is what I need to write. Spit this out for me.
Yeah.
And it's going to make us all amazingly more productive. However, it still can't make decisions.
Yeah. And honestly, the whole hallucination thing, like, great for kind of planning and thinking. And as you played with Claude Code, like writing code now is getting really good with it. There's a lot of these language models, but at the end of the day, like you got to have the human in the mix. You need somebody orchestrating it. Like, I think I think always you're just going to want to have like the person who's making the decisions, as well as somebody who knows the landscape, who can like identify where, telling AI what to do, but also like being able to coordinate a bunch of priorities and understand that at the same time. Because I think that's where oftentimes, the large language models are just telling you everything you want to hear, which is like,
I mean, well,
setting you up for disaster.
Hallucinations. I was just thinking about. I was just reading an article the other day, and I was thinking about this. Is this big push with AI and it can do everything, it can write code, and we don't need junior developers anymore. And I go, well, where are you going to be in 10 years? You're going to screw yourself. Like, we don't need APMs. You absolutely do, because you have to teach someone to do the job. And if you give an APM, the chance, you give them a job now, they may not stay with you, but they're going to go somewhere else. And it's just paying it forward.
I mean, it was funny. When I had employees, I used to always ask them, the first thing I'd ask, I'd be like, what is your career goals? Like, obviously this is not the end of your career. It's like, you're the production assistant for my company, right? It's like, do you want to direct? Do you want to produce? Do you want to act? Do you want to, and same thing, like every time I'm working with people, I always ask them, even though I'm not the boss anymore, but I'm like, where are you going with your career? Because that always helps how I gauge our relationship, where it's like, hey, if I see an opportunity that might not be totally like within the job description now, maybe I'm gonna throw it your way and give you a shot at it, or give you some more exposure to it, because it's gonna help your career out. And in the end of the day, that's gonna be like better for me and better for the organization.
No, it's funny. You make yourself valuable enough that they start asking you to do different things.
Yeah.
So I had they asked me to do an ERD, right? I'd never done an ERD before. I had no idea what it was. I had to Google what it was,
You're like, right on top of that, boss.
Yeah, I'm talking to people about it. They go, oh, that's usually done by architects. And I go, well, I'm not an architect. So now I'm asking myself, like, did they ask me to do this to see if I would, or see if I could, or
sometimes they're like, we just need anybody to.
Wow.
Honestly, I'm not gonna say guilty of that, but I've definitely, asked people for stuff just to like, I need the support. Like, I'll get to it if you don't do it, but could you take a whack at this?
Well, yeah, I think their intention was different, but that's a story for another day.
Well, I want to get some of those stories, like the honest stuff. So I can share mine if you don't want to share first. But what is one of like the biggest mistakes you made as a PM, and what did it teach you?
My biggest mistake was taking a project that I wasn't passionate about. When you're sitting in meetings going, I could care less about what they're talking about. It's miserable, and I know you're asking something specific about a specific project. I don't have an answer for you.
No, that's
like
fine.
I said, that's my best piece of advice is like, find a project that you care about. If you like, I don't know, dogs, go find a job with a company, around pet products or something. Like, don't take a job, a data heavy job where where you can sit in meetings and they're going to talk about adding columns to reports.
Yeah. I could not agree more. Bringing passion to your work is like makes it worth waking up in the morning for, honestly. Like, well, if I didn't have that for my job currently, like, I've really enjoyed my colleagues and the work I'm doing, but I'm not good at faking it, man. You know what I mean? Like, if I didn't have the passion for it, I would probably be looking for that next opportunity.
Well, but Lucas, we have this meeting where we need to add a column to a report. We need you there.
Yeah, that's where. See, a good use of AI. I'll get right on that, boss. For me, I made the biggest bonehead mistake a few months ago, where there was this project that existed before I showed up, and like a solution that was made before I even showed up, and I didn't know much about it. So
Right.
my it was like this redirect system, this basic redirect system on our WordPress site, which like is like a marketing site. They just found some temporary solution that they never fixed. And so I just, asked the engineering team to work with the project managers on it, be like, can you all just like figure this out? Like, I don't know what it is. It existed before me. Why don't you guys just like find a solution? It should not take long. And
Hmm.
so the head of the engineer started interacting with the project managers, and all I needed them to do was just like come to a solution
Right.
for this like basic redirecting app. And you know 10 meetings later, essentially I had to do like hour and a half meetings sitting down with the project managers to learn it. So I had to like do a deep dive into what they already supposedly knew, because they could not work together. Like
Oh,
the engineer was frustrated with the project managers, who were angry at the engineer. Nobody's listening to each other. And I was like, it's almost like you need a product manager in the middle of all this. And I was like, I it was because it felt like such an easy thing to do. I like dismissed it. It was a small little thing.
mhm,
I didn't know enough about it. I thought that's the quickest solution. And if I just treated it like any other part of the job, that it
right.
was my responsibility, it would have been done in like 2 days.
Mhm.
But I caused headaches for everyone. And they're all like sort of like apologizing to me for not making it work. And I'm like, no, I fucked this up. Like,
Right.
I did not prioritize it like I should have, because I thought it would have been a simple thing. And that was like a big lesson to me, though, is like, you got to own stuff. Like when especially like there's a reason the engineers don't talk to the project managers typically, right? They
That's
have me as a firewall to protect the engineers, but also to protect, the project managers from this kind of situation. So it was a good wake up call about that, where it's like some stuff you can't just like, fumble. You got to
well,
just take it seriously.
that's part of product is being able to speak engineer, right?
Yeah. And they could just, it was very eye opening to me, though. Because it was funny thing is like the engineer was super pissed because they were not being very descriptive about what they needed. But it was like, because they're saying, all this intricate, weird stuff that because they don't fully understand what's happening with the web development part of
Mhm.
it. So
Right.
they're just interpreting it the way they know it.
Right.
And he's not used to sitting down and being like, all right, now show me what you're doing. Let me just walk you through it. Like, show me
Right.
what you're typing. I even was like, what are the emails you're getting from your client? I was like reading emails, show me the files that were sent. Like I had to go that in depth to figure out what was actually needed. But I did it, and then I figured out the solution. But like by not giving it that proper due diligence, I took what should have been an easy solution and made it super annoying for everyone.
Well, that brings up, something else I was talking about with someone the other day, scalability. You're talking about an old WordPress site that was just put together basically as a Band-Aid on a bullet hole.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times that's done, and scalability isn't thought out. So one of my projects, that was something that was done, was when they first started, they were like, well, we'll do all this custom work for each client. And then as the company grows, it's not sustainable. So
Oh,
now you
hell yeah.
have,
Yeah.
a million workflows for every different customer, and when one breaks, you're going right down the line, and it's screwing everything up. And one of the main things I go into when I look at a project is, how is it scalable?
Hmm.
This works now, but with 100 customers, it's going to work with 1,000 customers. It's going to work with 1,000,000 customers. Like, how is this going to grow?
Honestly, that's a challenge in my role now too. And it's, I think in any role where you're with people in technology who they think of solutions, that will work for them in the moment, but they're not thinking about the scale. And like
That's
that
the
is
second
like
time you said
constantly
that.
weighing on my shoulders all the time. Is like, if I make this change here, how is this going to be done? So it's fine when we have 5 users. It's what happens when we have 50? What happens when we have 1,000? What happens when we have 1,000,000? Like not being able to project. And if you realize a lot of people, even in our industry, are just not capable of thinking in that way.
Well, again, that's the second time you've said that, and second, I'm going to warn you: you can't solution these things.
Yeah.
It's all about the problem statement.
Hmm.
It's, why do we have this problem? What's causing this problem? And what's the root of this problem is so important. So
Yeah.
important. So,
Well, so what does like a genuine product victory feel like to you? Like not the metrics or anything, but like the actual human moment where you're like, yep, it worked.
well, we talked about Claude Code and making prototyping way faster. So and that's a huge win for me, like being able to type in a prompt into Claude Code and it's spitting out of that, half an hour later is awesome. But you're asking like what's a true win?
Yeah.
It's like going through those Friday night releases and coming out on Monday morning and just seeing that it worked.
Yeah.
One of the big frustrations for me is like there's always something you didn't think about. And I'm really hard on myself about that because like you can think out every possible issue and you're gonna forget one.
Hmm.
And I always kind of kick myself when that issue comes up. Why didn't I think of that? Because you can't possibly think everything out. And you have to kind of celebrate those wins because again, maybe it's my pessimism. I don't
Hmm.
really know, but you know, I'm trying to think of a specific project where we had a great win when nothing came up, and I don't think that ever happened.
Well,
Yeah.
I would say from my perspective, in the moment, I'm always feel like I'm not doing enough. We're not moving fast enough. We're not showing enough progress, right? And then when so I write like my state of the products whenever we do a new release. I say what the new features added, and then I do a quarterly and a yearly one. So every quarter I do one, and I swear every time we get to the quarterly one, I'm like, damn, we got a lot done. And like, whoa, and you look at where we were 3 months ago to where we are now. And then like at the end of the year, I do the yearly wrap up of like what we were able to accomplish. And I'm always feel so proud when I look back of like, man, for where we were then to where we are now feels huge. But it's like, I never can grasp that in the moment. Like, and I have to remind myself constantly, like, it's okay. Like, I know it feels like you have all these roadblocks and that you're not moving in the right direction. You're inching towards the goal, but you're not sprinting. It's like, it's okay. Like, just be patient because a lot of these things they take time to align, but then when you get those features that finally align in the right way, and all that work you did for 3 months building up to it, you flip the switch, and then all of a sudden, like for us, it was seeing our user count just like skyrocket
Mhm,
because they had all these roadblocks they put in there, like you were saying earlier about like signing up and getting
mhm,
people into the product. Like for me, it was like a nightmare when I showed up realizing it was not efficient
mhm.
and nothing was efficient. So like it felt like we were making no progress. And I look back to earlier in the year, I'm like, my God, like we 150%, change in who's like being
Right.
people added to the product now. Like that was because of all these small efficiencies over time. It wasn't one magic bullet. It was like we removed roadblock after roadblock, more efficient processes. Then before you know it, a year goes by and you're like, wow, we were able to accomplish so much. But for me, it's hard to keep that perspective because I feel like I'm never doing enough or I need to be better or something.
I think yeah, you hit a lot of points that I like. And I think at least we think alike, and I don't know if most product managers do,
I
but
have no idea.
lack of efficiency drives me crazy. Like, I mean, doesn't matter what it is. Like, I come from working in restaurants.
Hmm.
I mean, even like cooking on a line, like why are your onions over there? They should be over here. Like there's all those little things. Like it just drove me nuts. And where I was just working was a giant insurance company,
Hmm.
and it drove me crazy. I was like, I need how many approvals before I can make a change?
Oh, that's the
You
thing
know?
that is no, I have not a good personality for that. It's funny because we're working with like our parent company on a lot of integrations because we need it. I'm like, you have so many resources, we could
Right.
benefit. It's like I'm like, and this is a win-win. I'm like, but I went on a call. Like, there's two of us on my team that we're like working all this stuff. Meanwhile, we're ready to go. Like, we built all this. Like,
Mhm.
we have the back end ready. We have the front end design, but not like I'm like, we need the data first before we can really fill it. And I get on a call. There's 11 people on the call. And they're all individually great people. Like, I've
Right.
had fine relationships with all of them, but I'm like, how do we get anything done when you have 11 people on this call who all have to like have an opinion and chime in and get approval? And um, it's crazy to me how any work gets done when you start getting to those big teams, which actually brings me to my next point, which is, um, you know, my prediction is teams are going to shrink
Mhm.
not only in engineering but across the board. I feel like smaller teams who can move quicker and get stuff out there quicker and get feedback and adapt is like gonna be the new norm.
Right.
But for yourself, like 5 years from now, what do you see like your PM role? What does it look like? Do you feel like you're gonna have to scale up, get bigger, get more skills, or do you feel like you're gonna have to move lateral, like change what your kind of position or role is? Like, what are you thinking?
So it's interesting 'cause every job I seem to have, I ended up working with multiple teams. So there's usually like an onshore team, an offshore team, a nearshore team, and they're all working on
Hmm.
different projects. So when I go to an interview and they go, well, tell me about the last team you worked on. It's like, well, which one? You know,
Yeah.
how many people were on the team? Well, there was 5 on this one and 7 on this one, you know, but like, it's so yeah, I like the idea of a smaller team, and I love the idea of like move fast and break stuff.
Yeah.
But, I mean, again, I don't know if I have an answer to that. I think we're all just kind of speculating at this point. I think that working on small teams is great, but at this point where we are, I think it still necessitates. And you're at a different point. More in that C-suite area
True. True.
where
Yeah.
they're going to get that whole the whole C-suite together to make decisions, and I don't think you're ever going to get away from that. But in terms of like moving fast and breaking stuff, I think that where you may have a team now, which is 3 or 4 engineers and say 2 QA guys and then a product manager, that's definitely going to shrink.
Hmm.
Or like we go back to productivity, your output's just going to be 10 times what it is.
Yeah,
You
move
know?
faster and create more, right? So it's
Right.
like we want that shipped, and something that would have taken 3 months, now we got to do in a week, and also now you have to do 3 versions of it,
Right. But
which is
again,
not necessarily a bad thing. I mean,
no,
that's
going back to what you were talking about before, though, with that is the idea that, like, yes, you can make that prototype or make that thing way faster, but the question then becomes, who's got, because you still can't trust AI. You can't trust it for everything. Someone has to look over that code.
yeah.
So that's where the bottleneck's going to become. It's right now it's like, say it's in QA and like, hey, when's this going to be tested? When's it going to be ready? Right. But I think that's going to shift into, well, we only have so many people to identify issues in this code because it's all knowledge
This is
based.
what I predict, though. They'll say, "Oh, we have this AI that will then check the code better, and we have these fake users that can spin up that are not real users, and we can do it." So now, again, like I said, now you have to ship things faster, and then like now we have to get in front of real human users, get that feedback. So it's not like your workload's gonna, get any easier with any of this. They're just people are gonna expect more and more. So like
Well, yeah, but
trying to explain that to people, like it's like don't expect you're gonna be golfing or like going to the beach. Like they're just gonna industries are gonna still be competing at that level, especially at the professional level, where you're just gonna have to do more all the time and
well, yeah,
faster.
again, it goes back to productivity. It's
Yeah,
all going to be multiplied tenfold.
yeah.
Rather than pushing, say one thing every quarter, you're going to be pushing 10 or 100 or whatever it is.
All right, so that is a little depressing, I must say. But so I would say though, if you had to tell like a mid-level PM now, or somebody who's just kind of cutting their teeth in the industry who are younger who got into it, what would you tell them to like invest in now? What are the skills or the tools you'd say like really hone these things, in the next few years?
I wish I had an answer for that. As a PM, we're always learning, right?
Hmm.
So what we were doing 5 years ago, you're not doing today. And right now, the big thing is AI. And we talked about cloud computing before, and that was the big keyword before. I think it's deeply personal what you learn.
Hmm.
I think going back to the basics is the most important thing. We talked in this, in the last hour about clarity and about problem statements and having all those basic skills laid out and solid are always going to be important. And I don't think, learning the new AI tool is the most important thing because next week there's going to be something new, and if you just concentrate on what's coming out now, you're always going to be behind.
Yeah, I think the learning aspect is essentially any career is that, but from our perspective, like because you have to be talking to engineers and talking to users and talking to stakeholders, like you have to have a curious mind and you have to be able to see from all those perspectives, and like so that I think that is the most valuable skill really is be able to teach yourself, but also I think the human element of it is like put yourself out there,
Right.
know what's happening in the industry, talk to people, get yourself, don't just be like, especially like both of us work remote. Like I go out of my way to go to events and to interact with people. Cause it's like, unless you have that network and that connections, it's hard to know what is coming, what the trends are. And, staying relevant's hard, man. Like you got to constantly be learning new skills as well as, adapting your role. Um, is there anything you're like excited about building? Can you tell me about that app you've been putting together?
I don't know if I want to tell people
Sorry,
about that.
honestly, if you're like, no, this is the next big thing, man, you got to keep it
Well,
secret.
no, it was an idea I had when I was in school for UX. I was working on some project, and it was one of the guys that was teaching my class had a brother who was like partially blind or, had
Hmm.
vision difficulties. And we, taught us a lot about screen readers and how they function and things like that. And one of my friends from high school's sister is teaches sign language.
Hmm.
So I was like, well, I was putting myself in the shoes of a deaf person. I was going, well, if they're out, I remember in high school I was working at Taco Bell, and this
Hmm.
guy used to come in with a paper and pen and write down what he wanted and hand it to you.
Yeah.
We all knew him because he come in like every week, and some deaf guy, but there's one way you can communicate. And I was like, with cell phones now, what if a person could sign to the camera on the cell phone and it could translate it? And I was
That
like,
makes so much sense. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer. But at the time, this was what, 7 or 8 years ago. There was no AI. There was no easy way to do this. So I had this
Yeah.
idea. I don't know if it's $1 million idea. Maybe it's a $500,000 idea. How many deaf people are out there who would
I
need
say, or
this?
maybe it's just like a thing that benefits humanity, and
Well,
like
exactly.
that's
But
awesome. Yeah.
right. But try to find funding for that.
No, oh, exactly. No, for sure. No, and I'll say that. So it's so funny you say it. I do think one of the trends that are happening is you're seeing everybody now as a developer, right?
Right.
Which and there's a lot of fear from people, especially in the industry, that like all of a sudden it's democratized that.
Mhm.
So what am I here for, right? What is my career going to do? But at the same time, like I think you're going to see an explosion of these niche apps, similar to like anybody can create an app, and I already experienced this from the film and television world, which is one of the reasons why I left it. Is like everybody's a creator, but the good side being you have these little disposable apps that aren't made to be $1 billion idea. They're made to solve a problem in your life or in your community's life, right? And so I'm gonna use an example of something I'm building just for the heck of it, for fun. Is I had like 30 gigabytes of footage that my family shot when we were growing up on VHS. DVDs, mini DVDs, all this weird stuff that was my mom gave to me as like the family archivist. And so I used to host it all on Vimeo, and they charged me like $300 a year. And I just got so sick of it where I'm like, I put them up there. Nobody watches them. My parents would have to write me to like, what was the password again? And I was like, I'm going to just start a family archive that's all of our video stuff, but not just limited to that. It's going to be like, you want to share a video of like your kids or whatever, your photos, whatever, you can back it up to the family archive.
Right.
So I'm essentially coding, and I already have the first version of it done over a weekend where I was like drinking a beer and using Claude Code and being like, here's my Firestore credentials. Here's
Right.
I want front end React. Like, and I went through the whole thing, and I have the first version pretty much done, and then I'm going to just build on it. But it's an archive, so all my family can save all of their video and photos stuff in one location, because that's always a pain in the butt. All your stuff saved to all these different services. Nobody keeps it. Then what happens when like people are passing away and dying and footage is getting lost? Like there needs to be a repository of that stuff. So that's what I started taking on. It's not meant to be an app for everyone, right? It's
Right.
just a use for my family, and I might like get my friends to kind of contribute some stuff to it. So there'll be different like permissions and things, but that's it. Like
Well, see
that's the height of
that
my ambition with it.
that tells me though that your family had a video camera.
Oh, I was a video guy, man.
Well,
Like I would grab it from my parents, and like I've videotaped a lot of that stuff as a kid.
So when I was a kid, my parents were like, we don't want to watch your, sixth grade graduation ever again.
That's what my wife said. She's like, I'm like, does your family have anything? She's like, God, no. Why would anybody want to watch that? I was
So,
like, "Oh, okay.
it's very funny. My parents like, well, I'm buying a video camera. Screw that.
Yeah, listen. That's definitely on a family by family basis. Well, Zach, it's been great talking to you, and I'm hoping our career paths intersect in the near future at some point. But I have to say, you are really one of the people that encouraged me to get to do this career switch, and it's honestly, I couldn't have been happier with the decision. So thanks again for being supportive.
I'm glad I was the part of the catalyst for your, I guess, wonderful new career. Um, I'm gonna test you later. I gave you a list of about 20 books. I'm
Oh,
gonna.
awesome! Yeah.
I did. It was a
Oh,
couple
you
years
did?
ago.
Yeah, no, and I definitely read a couple of them. It's funny, I have to admit, I was so poor back then. I had to see what I could get off the library and what I could pirate and steal as well. So, but I listened to like a few of them on on my Libby app,
Right.
and or read them on the Libby app, and then I think I ordered like one or two off of Amazon. But
It's
no,
funny.
I studied up before my interviews to make sure we were talking about jargon. So
Right.
much of like I was like, I need to know the jargon. because you
Mhm.
can't go into these interviews, and if you're not answering speaking the language of the industry, they'll smell that on you in a second.
No, absolutely. But yeah, I was going to say because I constantly get hounded by Audible saying you have 12 credits. I haven't bought a book in.
Oh, I cut all that stuff out. I had to. Like, it's overwhelming, all those subscriptions. But
Well, yeah, no,
anyway, thanks again, Zach. And yeah, I'll let you know like when this gets published. I'll definitely release it and tag you in it so you can comment and follow.